UFC bantamweight Sean "Sugar" O'Malley is sick and tired of being constantly compared to lightweight sensation Paddy Pimblett. Sean shut down the comparisons by saying he fought a much higher ranked and dangerous fighter as opposed to Paddy's opponent Jared Gordon at UFC 282. Sugar also advised the baddie to pick things up, get more skills, and stop ballooning to 200 pounds between fights. Keep watching this video as we tell you more about Sugar Sean and Pimblett. First up, former champion versus Jared Gordon. During a recent episode of his podcast, O'Malley talked about how he absolutely hates it when the fans compare him to fast-rising Liverpudlian Paddy Pimblett, along with being labeled as one of the most exciting prospects at the promotion. Fans also think he's going to be the next big cash cow. His rise at the UFC is compared to that of the notorious Conor McGregor, but as a fighter, people often compare him to the high-profile bantamweight Sean O'Malley. Sean is generally a really calm and composed guy, but you can tell all the comparisons are starting to get to him. He immediately shut them down by talking about his last opponent and Paddy's. Without throwing any shade at Jared Gordon, Sugar thinks he's had to go through much tougher battles to become the fighter he is today. He had to fight former champion Petr in his last outing to keep the hype alive and finally put himself in the driving seat for a shot at the title. Paddy, on the other hand, fought Jared, and if we're being honest, he almost got his backside handed to him. Gordon looked super impressive, and it actually looked like he'd crushed the Liverpudlian's dream at one point. Pimblett did look good every now and then, but it wasn't exactly a jaw-dropping performance or something. And despite the entire fight world siding with Flash, the judges ended up scoring the match in Paddy's favor, making it an extremely controversial victory. But yeah, that's what Sean is saying here. He went up against a former champion while the baddie fought Gordon. Next, not even in the same conversation. Like we said before, Sean isn't trying to take a swipe at Jared, but he just thinks his opponent was on a different level. In fact, they're not even in the same conversation. I fought the #1 killer. Jared Gordon is good, and he proved that he's good, but it's not even in the same conversation. Flash put on an exceptional display of fighting against Paddy. He had him cornered on multiple occasions, and let's not lie, almost everyone thought the hype train was finally about to be derailed. But like we said before, the judges scored the fight in the 27-year-old's favor, but he didn't get the reception he was expecting. Fans, fighters, and analysts took to Twitter, calling it a robbery in broad daylight. They even went as far as saying Dana White paid the judges to score the fight in Pimblett's favor. Petr, though, don't even get us started. He's one of the most talented and skilled fighters to have ever graced the UFC. Along with being a former UFC bantamweight champion, Petr is also an ACB bantamweight champion, and you know what makes it even more shocking? He's only 29 years old. So if we're talking about it in terms of achievements and skills, Jan is the better fighter by miles. But in terms of their last performances, Jared didn't do too badly, and Sean acknowledges that. He thinks Gordon completely schooled the UFC's future cash cow, and that's why comparing him to Paddy is disrespectful, since he's fought the tougher guy. Moving on, Rogan certified. It's a bit strange though, how Sean keeps stressing his opponent was tougher, when his victory was equally if not more controversial. The fight was divided, since a lot of fans thought the Russian had done just enough to squeeze a victory over O'Malley. But regardless of all the drama, it was a really close fight, and let's be real here, people. It could have gone either way. That's not what Sean thinks though. He thinks he did just enough to get a W, and the fact that his victory is Joe Rogan certified is enough to put an end to the debate. We can't exactly recall what episode is what, but Joe said he rewatched the fight and thought Sugar had round 1 and 3 in the bag. Since Petr only won one round, it wasn't exactly a controversial decision or something. But while he was saying all this on his podcast, Sean asked the fans if they could say the same about Paddy Pimblett versus Jared Gordon. If they sat down and rewatched the fight, would they be able to say the Liverpudlian won fair and square? Honestly, we're not sure what O'Malley is trying to say here. It's obvious he thinks Gordon got robbed, but does that mean the judges were in on it? Or how about we just end it here? Both of their fights were close and could have gone either way. It's as simple as that. The judges could have easily given the victory to Petr if he had another takedown or landed something significant. Same with Gordon. Now for a real wake-up call. Paddy has been talking about fighting a ranked opponent for the longest time now, but if an unranked fighter like Jared is able to throw him around the cage, we don't think he's ready yet. Sean actually thinks this is a big slap in his face, and he really needs to get serious if he wants to make it big. Being called the cash cow is one thing, but being the cash cow is another. And we're not going to beat around the bush or anything, but let's not kid ourselves here. It's pretty obvious he has the UFC behind him. They've been offering him fairly easy fights to build up hype and turn him into a superstar. At least he'll be able to sell a lot of people PVs and pack an arena when the boss finally makes him dance with one of the big boys, right? But after seeing his performance against Gordon, we have our concerns, and so does O'Malley. This is a wake-up call, and it's time he directed his energy toward training and getting better instead of just eating. We'll talk more about that in a bit because Sugar came down hard on the 27-year-old for putting on some crazy weight in between fights. But as far as the fight as a wake-up call goes, we couldn't agree more with O'Malley. It's time Paddy gets serious. It's time he realizes controversial victories and average performances aren't enough to land him a ranked opponent. Following up, time to upgrade his skills. O'Malley was still kind enough to call Paddy a true performer though. He thinks he has the potential to rise to the top, but for that to happen, he first needs to stop getting fat. And just for clarification, those are his words, not ours. He straight up advised the baddie to stop getting fat and direct his energy towards eating and not just eating food. This has been a big issue ever since he gained prominence at the UFC, with boss Dana White even talking about how it's a real hassle scheduling fights for him. Since he's an odd 45 to 50 pounds over the fighting weight at any given time, scheduling a fight becomes very difficult since there's always a little doubt about whether he'll make weight. Paddy hasn't had any trouble so far, but if we look at it in terms of longevity, it's definitely going to catch up to him at one point. The body can only take so much beating, right? He's getting smacked around inside the cage, and about a week later, he's 200 pounds, eating everything a professional fighter would typically avoid. We're not saying he should stick to his greens and some meat, but if he's serious about his career, then he can't be doing that. It's terrible for his body since he has to cut down so much weight in such little time. It's probably the reason why he looked really average against Jared too. Is he going to get better? Is he going to get fatter? We will see. We're hoping it's the former, but let's see what he takes away from this fight. Up next, a terrible game plan. Sean also had a problem with how confident Paddy was after the fight, thinking he won it without any controversy. As soon as his name was announced and the match referee raised his hand, he behaved as if he had knocked Jared out or something. And we get it. He has a persona. He has to live up to the baddie name tag. But regardless of all that, did you know Dana White actually thought it was a fair decision and blasted Jared for having such a terrible game plan? Paddy thinks he won the first and second rounds of the fight. He wasn't too confident about the third, but thinks it was pretty close. Dana, on the other hand, claims Gordon came in with such a terrible game plan since he wasn't even trying to get a knockout or something significant. He was so convinced he'd win the fight by the decision that he completely gave up in the third round and just went with the flow. And there's nothing exactly wrong with that, but if you're up, then why not stay up? He was operating at like 100 in the first two rounds, but it dropped to 50 in the third, and we're not sure why. Dana thinks Jared got a bit too and that's why he played it a bit too safe, ultimately costing him the fight. Alright, now we're convinced Paddy is the next cash cow. Smells like Dana privilege in here. Last but not least, what's next for these gentlemen? Sean O'Malley is in line for a title fight as he waits for a potential Henry Cejudo versus Aljamain Sterling championship bout. If Sterling is able to hold on to his title, we'll be seeing a high voltage match between the two gentlemen. If it's Henry, then we reckon it'll involve a lot of bad blood since both of them have already started exchanging words. As for Paddy, we're not sure if his performance was enough to get him a ranked opponent. He'll probably be making another appearance sometime in March in London. That's it from our side, folks. So what do you think? Is Sean right about having tougher opponents than Paddy Pimblett? Let us know in the comments below. Remember, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more interesting videos in the future. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.